At 6:39 p.m., my phone lit up with a voicemail from my father. I expected "good job" because I had just closed the strongest quarter our company had ever seen. Instead, I heard his voice, flat, careless, almost bored. "Your keycard is deactivated. Don't come in tomorrow." That was it. No explanation, no meeting, no thank you. Just a clean erase like I was a typo he finally corrected. My name is Elise Hart, and I spent 16 years building my father's company like it was my future. But in 7 seconds, he decided it was. And stay till the end, because what happened next changed everything, and the twist didn't just shock me, it shocked the entire board. Before we continue, tell me where you're watching from. City and country. I read more comments than people think, and your comment helps stories like this find the right audience. I replayed the voicemail 3 times, hoping I'd misheard something. Maybe he said, "deactivated temporarily." Maybe he said, "come in early." He didn't. The silence afterward felt louder than his words. Outside my office window, the warehouse lights still glowed. Forklifts still moved. Trucks still idled at the dock. The place was breathing like normal. And that's what made it so unreal. Because every system that kept that building alive, I built it. Dispatch tracking, inventory automation, vendor reconciliation, every little fix that stopped chaos from swallowing us. I didn't just work there. I engineered survival. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing this wasn't sudden. It was planned. I started at 19, right out of community college, thinking I'd learn the business. At first, it was basic work, counting pallets in summer heat, sorting invoices in a noisy back office, fixing the label printer that everyone pretended wasn't broken. I was the person people called when the shipment was missing, when the numbers didn't match, when the client threatened to leave. And slowly, the company stopped being Dad's place. It became my responsibility. My father, Gordon Hart, loved to say, "We're a family company." But what he really meant was, "We're a company where family gets what they want." And I was the one who gave. Every weekend I came in, just to catch up. Every holiday I answered calls, just in case. Every time payroll got tight, I delayed my own raise so drivers and packers could get paid on time. I didn't do it for applause. I did it because I believed in building something real. Then my stepbrother Kellen came home. He was 28, freshly repositioning, after failing at 2 different careers. He walked into the building wearing a suit that still had stiff creases, like it had never been used for actual work. My father introduced him like a miracle. "Kellen's going to modernize us," Dad said. "Fresh perspective." I remember the way people looked at me when he said it. Not because they disliked Kellen. Because they knew who had already modernized everything. But nobody challenged Dad. Nobody ever did. Within a week, Kellen had a title, Director of Growth. Within a month, he had an office. Within 3 months, he had a habit. A habit of taking credit for anything that went well. If a client renewed, it was his relationship management. If a shipment arrived early, it was his strategy. If costs went down, it was his optimization. Even when I was the one who built the process, wrote the scripts, trained the team, and fixed the mistakes. And when a client asked Kellen a detailed question, he would freeze, smile, then glance at me like I was his personal translator. I'd answer because I couldn't stand watching us lose business. Later, he'd corner me in a hallway and hiss, "Stop making me look unprepared." "I'm not," I'd say. "You are," he'd insist. "You're the operations girl, stay behind the curtain." Behind the curtain. Like I was a stagehand in my own life. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself loyalty would matter. But I didn't see what was forming right in front of me. Because while Kellen was taking credit publicly, he was taking something else privately. And I didn't notice until the numbers started acting strange. At first, it was subtle. Commissions that looked inflated. New consulting vendors I didn't recognize. Deals that appeared at the end of the month like magic, then quietly got reversed later. When I asked our accountant, he shrugged. Kellen submitted it. When I asked Kellen, he laughed. You worry too much. That's why Dad trusts me with growth. Dad. Dad who never checked a report unless I summarized it. Dad who loved results but hated details. It was the perfect environment for someone like Kellen. And I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I expose him immediately? Because in my family, truth had a price. When I used to point out problems, my mother would say, "Don't embarrass your father." When I warned Dad about risky clients, he'd say, "Stop being negative." When I asked for accountability, they'd say I was too intense. So I did what I'd always done. I documented quietly. No drama, no shouting, just proof. Spreadsheets, timestamps, email chains, approval logs. I didn't build a revenge file. I built a reality file. Because I'd learned something early in business. People can argue feelings. They can't argue verified patterns. Then came the week I closed the biggest quarter in company history. I secured a contract that took 6 months of negotiations and 3 nights of rewriting terms. I coordinated logistics across 3 states, handled compliance issues, and even salvaged a supplier failure 2 days before signing. The client thanked me directly. "You're the reason we're staying," he said. I walked out of that meeting exhausted, but proud. For one night, I let myself believe, maybe Dad will finally see me. That's when the voicemail came. "Your keycard is deactivated. Don't come in tomorrow." And I didn't see it coming. Not because I was naive. Because I didn't think a father could fire his daughter like she was a temporary contractor. I barely slept. Not from sadness. From a strange, sharp clarity. At 5:30 a.m., I drove to the office anyway, just to test something. The sky was still dark, and the parking lot was empty. I walked to the entrance and swiped my card. Red light. Denied. My stomach dropped, not because I was locked out, but because it meant he really did it. He didn't cool off overnight. He doubled down. I stood there staring at the glass doors, watching my own reflection, like I was someone else. And then my phone buzzed. A text from Kellen. "Told you I'd take over. Don't make this messy." Messy. As if I was the one who had just cut a human being out of their life with a voicemail. I screenshotted it and added it to the folder. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I stopped trying to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding me. I went home, opened my laptop, and pulled up every access log I still had. I didn't hack anything. I didn't steal anything. I only downloaded what I personally created and what I had legal access to as part of my role. Process documentation, system architecture, vendor history, approval trails. And the more I reviewed, the more one thing became undeniable. Kellen wasn't just sloppy. He was siphoning. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the way my father helped him do it. At 11:15 a.m., my mother called. I answered on the third ring, expecting, at minimum, confusion. Instead, she sounded annoyed. "Elise, why are you making your father's morning difficult?" I actually laughed, once under my breath. "I'm making it difficult," I asked. "You know Kellen needs this chance," she said. "You've always been strong. You'll land somewhere else." Strong. In our family, strong was code for you can handle being mistreated. I lowered my voice. "Did Dad tell you he fired me by voicemail?" A pause. "Then he didn't fire you. He's just restructuring." Restructuring. Another word that meant, we did something cruel, but we want it to sound professional. I hung up politely, because I didn't trust myself not to say something I'd regret. And that's when my accountant, Miles, emailed me something by accident. He meant to forward it to Dad. But he sent it to me. The subject line was, "Urgent, bank hold risk." I opened the attachment and felt my heartbeat change. A compliance note from the bank. Multiple flagged transfers, unusual vendor activity, pending review. And the listed, authorized manager. Kellen. I sat there in silence, staring at those numbers. Then I whispered, "So that's why." That voicemail wasn't about restructuring. It was about getting me out before I could see the fire. And the next thought hit me even harder. If the bank was already watching, Dad must be terrified. Not of losing me. Of getting caught. Stay with me, because the next move I made wasn't loud. But it was irreversible. I called my lawyer, Tessa Monroe, the same attorney who reviewed our partnership paperwork years ago when Dad insisted I sign, for tradition. Back then, it felt symbolic. A yearly signature ritual he called shared responsibility. Tessa pulled up the file while I waited. Then she said one sentence that changed my entire posture. "Elise, you're not just an employee." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "You're listed as a minority member on the operating agreement," she said. "Your signature is required for dissolution and certain financial actions." I didn't feel happy. I felt sick. Because it meant something worse. Dad didn't treat me like family, but he was perfectly fine using my name to stabilize the company. I asked Tessa, "What can I do without crossing a line?" Her voice stayed calm. "You can protect yourself, and you can request an independent audit." So I did. We drafted a formal notice. I was stepping away due to removal of access, and I was requesting a full forensic review of company transactions tied to my signature authority. No insults. No threats. Just structure. Then I sent it to the bank's risk department and the company's registered agent. After that, I turned my phone face down and waited. It didn't take long. At 2:06 p.m., Dad called. I didn't answer. At 2:19 p.m., he called again. At 2:31 p.m., my mother texted, "Please stop. Your father is under pressure." Under pressure. From what? Reality. At 3:10 p.m., Kellen called me for the first time in months. I answered because I wanted to hear his tone. He didn't even say hello. "What did you do?" he snapped. "I requested an audit," I said. "You can't do that," he said, voice rising. "Dad says you're trying to destroy us." "I'm trying to understand where the money went," I replied. Silence. Not the peaceful kind. The guilty kind. Then he said something that told me everything. "You always think you're smarter than everyone." There it was. Not denial. Not confusion. Just resentment that I could see through him. He hung up. And 5 minutes later, an email hit my inbox from the bank. Temporary restriction, placed pending verification of authorized activity. In simple terms, the money stopped moving. The company's oxygen shut off. And suddenly, the people who erased me remembered my name. Dad finally left a voicemail that night. His tone was softer, almost wounded. "Elise, we need to talk. You're misunderstanding. You're hurting your mother." I listened twice. Not once did he say, "I'm sorry." Not once did he say, "I shouldn't have done it that way." He only said what he always said when consequences appeared. "You're making this hard." But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came the next morning when Tessa called me and said, "They filed paperwork." "What paperwork?" I asked. "A dissolution request," she said. "They tried to dissolve the company without your signature." My chest went cold. It wasn't just betrayal. It was desperation. They weren't trying to move on from me. They were trying to erase my legal tie before auditors could look too closely. Tessa paused, then added, "And Elise, the attempt itself is evidence." For the first time in days, my eyes burned. Not from sadness. From the weight of finally seeing the truth clearly. My father wasn't confused. He was complicit. I didn't scream. I didn't rush to the warehouse. I didn't post anything online. I did what I've always done when people play games with facts. I organized. Over the next 2 days, I prepared a clean digital package. Vendor invoices with duplicate routing numbers. Commission records with mismatched approvals. Email threads showing Kellen pushing last-minute reclassifications. Access logs showing late-night exports of client data. And I included Kellen's text, "Don't make this messy." Then Tessa filed for a court-ordered audit and a temporary protection order against unauthorized financial actions tied to my authority. It wasn't revenge fueled by rage. It was justice built on paper. The hearing came faster than anyone expected. In the courtroom, I sat quietly, hands folded, breathing steady. Dad avoided my eyes. My mother looked at the floor like it could rescue her. Kellen didn't show up at all. His lawyer did, holding a thin folder and a confident smirk. Tessa walked in carrying a binder so heavy, she set it down with both hands. The judge reviewed the filings in silence. Every page turned felt like a door closing. Finally, the judge looked up. "I'm ordering a full forensic audit," she said. "And until completion, restricted transactions remain restricted." Dad's face drained. Not because he feared losing money. Because he feared losing control of the story. Outside the courtroom, Dad stepped toward me like he wanted to hug me. But his hands stopped halfway. "Elise," he said, voice cracking, "please, we can fix this as a family." And for a moment, I almost wanted to believe him. Then I remembered the voicemail. The deactivated keycard. The way family only mattered when they needed saving. I kept my voice low. "You didn't want family when you erased me. You wanted convenience." My mother whispered, "You're breaking us." I looked at her gently. "No, I stopped holding you together." Then I walked away. No dramatic speech, no victory smile. Just distance. 3 months later, the audit confirmed what I already knew. Money had been misrouted through fake vendors, commissions had been inflated, and the dissolution attempt had triggered additional oversight. Kellen was removed from any leadership role as part of a settlement. My father offered me my job back, this time with a title, a raise, and public praise. And that's the part people expect me to celebrate. But here, the truth. I didn't want the job back. I wanted my dignity back. So I negotiated a buyout of my ownership stake and walked away clean. I moved 2 hours north and started a smaller logistics consulting firm with one rule. No one gets promoted for being related. They get promoted for showing the work. Last quarter, we hit our first major milestone. Not because I won. Because I finally stopped working for love that came with conditions. If you've ever been punished for being loyal, remember this. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't destroying someone. It's refusing to carry them anymore. This story is fictional and for entertainment purposes only. If it stayed with you, like the video, subscribe for more emotional justice stories and comment. Would you have walked away or demanded the truth?